Hello, you silly geese. It is I, Lily, and today I am here to bring you my Thorns Smith of Kitava League Start build guide. Now, the first question you may have if you haven't been around my channel or Culturix channel, just haven't heard of Thorns before, is what is Thorns in Path of Exile 2? Well, Thorns is the classic spiky boy archetype where you take damage to deal damage. However, in Path of Exile 2, things get a little bit more complicated than in a lot of other games. You see, in Path of Exile 2, the entire mechanic of Thorns revolves around two support gems, Barbs and Quill Burst. These gems allow you to apply your Thorns damage on hit for the next few hits after every time you take a hit that can retaliate with Thorns. Now, that can retaliate with Thorns is an important caveat there, as by default Thorns only retaliates against melee attacks, making us have an essential unique in the form of Crown of the Pale King. This makes it so that Thorns can retaliate against all hits, which makes it a lot easier to proc Barbs and Quill Burst to output our damage. Now, Thorns is not the strongest archetype in the game. In fact, I would even probably place it at B or C tier for strength and farming. However, it is an extremely tanky build and it is a very fun build, and I personally love it. And even though I would rate it at these low tiers, I would probably still rather play it than most S tier builds. It is a lot of fun, it's very enjoyable. If you want to optimize your gameplay for fun and not efficiency, then Thorns is a great build for you to try out. Now, as for what Thorns is good at and what it's bad at, Thorns is great in any situation where you are going to get hit a lot. This makes a core staple of farming for Thorns builds Simulacrum. It's also really good at farming Ultimatum. I think it will shine at the new Elver Temples because you are in a small room with a lot of enemies, which is where Thorns shines. However, it does have a very difficult time with some bosses, especially Zest. Any boss that hits slowly is going to be painful. You want a boss where you can't get through all of your Thornskin stacks before getting hit again. This can make Arbiter of Ash work pretty well because he has quite a decent attack speed in certain of his phases. However, as I mentioned before, Zest kind of sucks because he hits once in a million years for a million damage. But enough about that. Let's talk about how Thorns has been changed in 0.4. I don't think the changes in 0.4 are particularly interesting to Thorns. If you have played Thorns before, this is not the most exciting league to play it again. However, it has gotten stronger than last league, so if you've never played Thorns before, this is a great time to give it a try. Now, I'm going to start us off talking about how it's been nerfed in 0.4, and that is just by one thing, and that is that Thornskin has been bug fixed. It can no longer be stacked. However, most of the best Thorns builds in 0.3 were running one Thornskin 2 and one Thornskin 1, so we're really not losing a hell of a lot from that. And the buffs we're going to get to Thorns are going to way outshine what Thornskin stacking ever did for the build. First off, starting with the new passive tree. Now, we obviously don't have the details yet, but as it stands, Thorns is kind of a left side, top left mechanic already. So getting, I think it was like 130 new nodes in the top left of the tree is undoubtedly going to be a buff to Thorns. We're just going to have to wait and see how much of a buff. Separately to that, although this build won't use it, Brass Dome got a massive buff, and that's been our best in the slot chest for the whole of 0.3 and will definitely be amazing in 0.4. However, we're not going to be using that because we're going to be playing Smith of Kitava, because Smith of Kitava is getting a new Ascendancy notable associated with its white armor mechanic, which is that if you have a white body armor equipped with Smith of Kitava and the correct notable taken, you gain 100% increased Thorns damage. This already immediately makes up for A, having a white chest immediately, and B, for losing out on Thornskin stacking. But what also makes up for having a white chest is it is possible to get 16% of armor from body armor as flat Thorns damage, and Smith of Kitava now gains 200 flat armor to body armors per ascendancy points. This means that with 8 ascendancies, you can be getting up to 1,600 flat armor on a Smith of Kitava. This, with a 3-socket item, allows you to get up to 4,700 armor on your body armor, which is the equivalent with 10% of body armor as Thorns damage to 470 flat Thorns damage. That is 2.5 tier 1 flat Thorns rolls. That is absolutely insane. It gives you 20 flat thorns per ascendancy point before sticking runes in your body armor, because yes, this applies directly to the body armor, so runes will scale this by a percentage, as will quality. So again, 4,700 armor on your body armor is plausible and possible in 0.4. Now, on top of that, Smith received a few other buffs, allowing it to be much tankier, including immunity to all damaging ailments. It gives you immunity to ignite, poison, and bleed for 1 ascendancy point. You can get this before Viper Napuatsi for basically one of the easiest campaign runs of all time. Also, being Smith of Kitava in general, and this isn't even a buff, this is just a part of Smith of Kitava, leads to cheaper gearing because you don't have to buy a body armor, which is often one of your most expensive slots. Now you can just roll with whatever the best grey body armor you find is. That's amazing. On top of that, getting resistance capped is very easy with Smith of Kitava. You can take the Coal Stoker Notable to make half of your fire resistance apply to cold and lightning as well, which is very comfortable. However, I don't think it's ideal for us to take that. Instead, you can just take the 1-pointer that gives you 75% fire resistance, which alleviates the need to get 75% of your resistances on the rest of your gear. Again, saving you money. That's very comfortable, and also all of this put together makes the Smith of Kitava insanely tanky on a low budget, which is very important for a build where you have to get hit to deal damage. You've got to be able to not get one shot. So I do think that Smith of Kitava is going to be one of the most tanky ascendancies in 0.4, which just immediately makes it a good ascendancy for Thorns. Now, Smith of Kitava isn't going to be the only ascendancy option for Thorns. It is, however, going to be the only ascendancy option that I will make a build guide for at this point in the league. Pretty much every ascendancy in the game is Thorns viable, so I can't present them all to you in this video. Instead, I will try to get a tier list of every ascendancy in the game for Thorns out before the patch drops. We will see if that releases or not, but it is currently on my cards. It's currently on my plan. I will live stream putting that together. You can check my Twitch out at the link down in the description below if you want to be involved in the decision making for that. But yeah, basically every ascendancy is actually Thorns viable. I just think Smith is going to be the best league starter this league. Let's get into the PoB that I have cooked for you. You can find this PoB in the description down below. I'll try and keep it up to date. I probably won't make a Mobalytics because Mobalytics seems to have issues with importing from Path of Building at the moment, and that site is just way too much work for me for, I feel like, way too little gain. It doesn't give you nearly as much information about what you're doing as I feel like Path of Building does if you know how to use it. If you don't know how to use Path of Building, I recommend just having a look at content that has been put out by people like Zizarin that explains how to use Path of Building in very clear terms. If you want a guide from me on how to use Path of Building, let me know in the comments down below and I will consider making such a guide at some point when I have the time. Anyway, in this Path of Building, I have a ton of notes. As you can see here, you can read these at your leisure. They should help you put the build together quite well. But I'm going to run you through the act progression on Thorns and just general your progression on Thorns. Starting with your Act 1, you are going to at this point be a basic bonk build. You can't play Thorns without Crown of the Pale King, which requires level 16. So you just can't play Thorns before level 16. But at this point in the game, you will find that a warrior with a two-handed mace using Rolling Slam, Bone Shatter, and Perfect Strike is going to do a lot of damage. So that's what we start with. You can see these skills here. We just go Rolling Slam, Bone Shatter, Perfect Strike, and here is your rotation. I've got it mentioned here with Herald of Ash as your initial Spirit Gem because it just helps this build that otherwise would struggle with it with AoE, making things a little bit more happy, a little bit more comfortable. As for the pathing, you just path through every increased melee damage node that you can at the beginning into some skill speed to make things more comfortable, and then just damage with two-handed weapons. You can keep going on with this build as far as you want. Khan has a great guide that I have linked to in the notes, but but I also do cover a tree up to level 25 here. This just gets you some more area of effect, a little bit more damage, nothing too hectic. Again, if you want to go past level 25 before switching to Thorns, you can take a look at Khan's guide linked in the notes. And as for gear for this early warrior setup, I've not really put a lot of thought into it in the pub because you kind of just take what you can get this early on. The important things to note is that your best weapon is just always going to be whatever has the highest physical damage. You're going to be running Brutality in your Bone Shatter and Rolling Slam, which just means that you can't do any elemental damage with those abilities, and Perfect Strike converts physical damage to fire anyway, so getting flat elemental does nothing for you. You just want the highest flat physical damage two-handed mace that you can find, and then for boots you want as much movement speed as you can find. At varying levels you can get varying amounts of movement speed. Try and get a 10% movement speed boots as early as possible, 15% when it becomes available. The higher your movement speed, the more comfortable it just is to run around as a warrior. Now, I recommend the earliest you can switch to Thorns being level 16. I personally, if I league start this, will be doing everything I can to switch to Thorns at level 16. I just find that Thorns makes the campaign extremely comfortable. However, some things worth noting is that there are minimum requirements to switch to Thorns, and unless you have insane RNG, these will cost you currency. Firstly, a Crown of the Pale King is a complete non-negotiable. You have to have one of these. On day one of last league, they were about 7-8 chaos, so quite expensive. However, they fell down to 1 exalt within 2 days. So depending on how lucky you get on currency early on, and depending on if you do a late league start or not, it could be very expensive to get Crown of the Pale King. Put a live trade search on your second screen, or if you don't have a second screen, on your phone or whatever, keeping an eye on the Crown of the Pale King prices. And if you see one going for 1 exalt, snap that up if you've dropped 1 exalt. And then also you'll need at least 1 tier 3 support gem, preferably 2. Tier 4 and 5 support gems also work because you can cut any tier into any tier below it. You just want to be able to get barbs and quill burst if you can. That will just make your life a lot easier and more comfortable. But if you can't get that, I would again just recommend not switching to Thorns until you can get a Crown of the Pale King and a copy of Barb's support. It's all that really matters. There are other things you can also get if you have excess currency through really good RNG or through a late league start, making things very cheap. You can also get a Briar Patch quite early for a ton of Thorns crit chance and some extra physical Thorns damage. It's very nice. I recommend keeping an eye out for that as well, but it's not essential to the build. It just makes the build a lot easier. Now, other things you're going to have to know for your Thorns Transition. Firstly, you are going to need to switch to a spear. The specifics of the spear doesn't matter. If you get the spear you can find with the lowest dexterity requirement and the highest attack speed, that's about as good as it's going to get in the campaign. I recommend, if you're switching to Thorns in Act 2, go back to Act 1, chat to Renly, and buy a random grey spear from him. It'll do you well enough. It will work, and that's all that matters. Now, the reason you want a spear is because you're going to run Rapid Assault. This is just the fastest hitting strike skill in the game. It has to be a strike so you can slot barbs in there, and it has to be fast so that you can get rid of your barb stacks as quickly as possible, so that when they're refreshed with the next hit, you've gotten as much value out of them as possible. And there's just nothing in the game right now faster than Rapid Assault. Maybe Wolves will bring something faster than Rapid Assault, but you can't run a shield while you're a wolf, so I am not really interested in that. I think we're just going to keep going Rapid Assault. Now, I mentioned shield. There's 2 reasons to run shield. First off, this is one of the places where you can get flat Thorns damage, which is very essential for the build. You can see here all the level brackets where your flat Thorns damage is upgraded. You can get this on a body armor, a shield, and a belt. However, from our first Ascendancy onwards, we are going to be running with a normal body armor, so we can't get Thorns damage on body armor as a Smith, but that's fine because we can get plenty of damage otherwise from Smith. That will more than make up for that. Now, you are going to want a shield with your spear, firstly because that's the only offhand you really can run with a spear, but also secondly because of Resonating Shield and that Flat Thorns like I mentioned. Resonating Shield is just there to break armor so that you can trigger your choice of Spirit Gem as a Thorns character, which is Scavenged Plating. Scavenged Plating provides you with Thorns damage per Scavenged Plating up to 10 stacks. It is without a doubt the biggest source of Thorns damage in the game at the moment, and also it gives you more armor per stack, so it's just a pretty amazing buff, and that's why you're going to want Resonating Shield to break armor. Now, as for your tree with Thorns, this is what it's going to look like. It's basically just pathing nodes. If you switch at level 16, you want to get Thorns damage leeches life from Vengeance as soon as possible. This is the main thing that just makes it so that you don't immediately die from how much you're getting hit. This is a lot of light fleet. You'll be very impressed with it when you take it. This is our bare minimum on the tree before we can switch. However, as time goes on, depending on when you switch or as you level up with Thorns, you can path over here. Firstly, for some increased Thorns damage here, that'll just make your leveling more comfortable. But secondly, and more importantly, for Revenge here, which gives you physical Thorns equal to 10% of item armor on your equipped body armor. Now, after the patch, all of these nodes from Smith of Kitava are also going to give your body armor 200 more flat armor. This is going to work for Revenge, which means that each point here is 20 flat Thorns before quality improvements and before rune sockets. So Revenge is going to be a huge amount of damage, and we want to get it as quickly as possible. However, these top two pathing nodes are complete trash. Coming down the other direction, you can get block chance and Thorns damage that'll just make your experience much more comfortable. So this is our priority once you've got that Vengeance set up. And then next, while you're leveling Thorns, you're just going to want to path towards all these crit-related nodes. This is because Thorns can get an absolutely unhinged amount of flat critical strike chance from Briar Patch. 25% before corruptions, but this can be corrupted up to 30.5%. I don't think any other build in the game has that much flat critical chance, which just makes it impossible to scale Thorns damage really off of anything other than crit, as well as you can scale it with crit. So crit's just a complete no-brainer for us Thorns players. Now from level 43, the next kind of tier up that I've considered putting into this path of building is level 65, which is where you're going to be first entering maps. So this is your first like end game kind of progression setup. You're going to be further ascended on Smith of Kitava. I just realized that I didn't run through the ascendancies that you're going to want in your campaign. You're first up going to want it's not called lead lining anymore. It's going to be revamped in the patch. I don't remember what it's called now, but it gives you 100% increased lightning damage. That's going to be your first priority from Ascendancy. Your second priority from Ascendancy is going to be heat proofing. On the current patch, it's body armor grants unaffected by ignite. On the next patch, it's going to be body armor grants unaffected by ignite, poison, and bleeding. This will make you much tankier in the campaign, especially in Act 3. So this is just very tasty, very, very nice, very useful. And then in your second Ascendancy, you're going to want to get Tantalum Alloy to make yourself much tankier, to make resistances a very, very easy problem to solve, as well as Katavan Engraving, again, just to make yourself much tankier and to get 15% increased life. If you don't know how to do Trials of Sekima as Thorns, Kulturek has a great video about that I will link to in the description down below. But for now, I'm just going to tell you, just hold up your shield, just use Resonating Shield. The monsters will come to you, they will attack you. It will be slow, but you won't take any honor damage as long as you hold up your shield and face it towards the enemies. So you kind of just run through Sekimas holding up your shield, and it's very free. It's just a little bit slow. And as for Trials of Chaos, all the enemies in there are very fast, which is great for Thorns. So that one's extremely free. Now, as for your early endgame with Smith, we are going to mostly focus on defenses, because on the current tree, at least before any changes that might come with the patch, there is not much you can do offensively with Thorns on the tree beyond what I've already shown you. Your top priority, I think, is probably going to be Voracious for some instant leech. After that, the only damaging node we can still get, Tribal Fury. This is great in maps for clearing entire packs at a time. It will consume multiple barb stacks per attack, but that's fine because it'll kill packs of enemies so much faster. It's just a very comfortable thing. You'll also switch to, instead of piling through these attribute nodes, to instead grab some armor applies to elemental damage to make yourself tankier. We want to get hit, so we want to be tanky for the same reason. We'll get unbending for some stun threshold and maximum life. 3% increased maximum life is honestly a lot of maximum life when there aren't very many other sources of increased maximum life in the game. We're also going to want to get our block chance up as soon as possible. Unfortunately, block chance is a little bit bugged out in Path of Building at the moment. It's very annoying, but Vigilance is great for 10 life gained whenever you block. When you get up to 50% block chance, this basically means that you're going to be gaining 10 life per every second time you get hit. Very comfortable, makes for some nice regeneration. You're also going to want to just grab some more armor nodes. We're going to have an insane amount of armor, so getting some extra stun threshold and getting basically crit immunity is going to be very, very, very comfortable, make your life so much easier throughout the game. More block nodes here. Lay Siege also does give us extra damage, which is very nice, and we can also come down here to fast metabolism. This is a very important node. It makes it so that your life leech isn't removed when you are on full life, which just means that as soon as you get hit, you're instantly going to be regenerating that life back up. It makes you insanely more tankier against large quantities of hits. It won't make you tankier against one-shots, but you hopefully won't be getting one-shot too much because you're going to be progressing your gear and stuff, and especially you're going to have an insane amount of armor as Smith of Kitava, and a lot of it is going to apply to elemental damage as well, which will make you very tanky. As for skills in the early endgame, for our Rapid Assault, you're never really going to want to progress it much past this point. Barbs and Quill Burst, of course, are essential, but you can also get Rapid Attacks to make it even faster. Don't worry about, with Rapid Attacks 3, the tagline of supported skills deal 50% less damage. It's not a problem. This does not support Quill Burst or Barbs. It only supports the basic Rapid Assault skill, which in our setup is doing no damage anyway. So this is just free attack speed. And then Culling Strike. This one's a bit weird. It also doesn't support Barbs or Quill Burst, but if enemies just happen to be on the right amount of health, it will trigger on your Rapid Assault, even though it does basically no damage, which is nice. It will just basically make enemies die a tiny bit faster. It's not necessary. You don't have to take it, but it can make life a lot easier. Then we also would like to slot Rake in here at some point if you want speed. This can be a bit clunky. I personally don't usually use Rake much, but it's basically just a strike skill, meaning we can put Barbs and Quill Burst in it, that also moves you, which just basically allows you to compensate for how little movement speed warriors have because of being armor based. So that's quite nice. We again just go Rapid Strikes 3 and Culling Strike for the same reason as Rapid Assault. We're going to keep with Resonating Shield. This is going to always be our way to break armor. And as for support gems, we're just going to make it a little bit better at breaking armor. We're going to make it faster with Rapid Attacks 3, and we're going to make it break more armor with Armor Demolisher, or just to get Scavenge Plating stacks faster. And then as for our second Spirit Gem, as we get more Spirit throughout the campaign and into the end game, we can go with Magma Barrier. This just gives you 25% increased block chance. This will make it significantly easier for you to get block chance capped, and there isn't really much else we can do with Spirit Gems, and we just need something to stick our Thornskin 2 in for 70% increased Thorns damage at the cost of 40 Spirit. This will very comfortably just use up all 100 of our spirit. Now, as for items, I haven't really polished out this section of items. You basically just want to be getting flat Thorns damage the best you can at your current level on your belt and your shield. And otherwise, you're just going to want to focus on resistances, armor, and life. It's very simple gearing. I didn't really feel like I needed to fill this in here because it's the way you would gear any other character, basically. However, in the next loadout, don't worry, I have actually provided you with gear. This is what I would call pretty much your best in slot, near mirror tier setup. Not actually mirror tier, but this is like your uber end game. You've got a lot of money and you want to spend it. This is what your build's going to look like. Now, to run you through the gear quickly, First off, this is your best in slot spear. As you can see, the spear itself has basically no DPS, but what's important about it is the increased attack speed, the attributes, and the 20% of damage as extra physical damage. Now, because you only want 3 modifiers on your spear, it's actually insanely easy to craft. And I have in the notes here, a link to my crafting guide that I made last league, but also just a text version of basically that crafting guide if you don't want to follow the video, if you just want to read instead. It is very easy to craft your spear. It can be kind of expensive, but you don't really need to do anything special with your spear early on. You can just slap some speed on it with Essence of Haste and call it a day and be happy enough. This is specifically spear crafting for a best in slot spear. In the previous patch, I think crafting a spear could cost you anywhere between 1 and 5 divines depending on your luck, but again, this is as good as a spear gets. So 1 to 5 divines for your best weapon is insanely cheap. It's just really, really easy to craft that with Thorns. Then as for our shield, this is where things get a little bit more expensive. The most important roll to us is just going to be that Thorns damage. You can roll up to 151 to 220 physical Thorns damage. Every flat bit of damage counts. On top of that, it's a shield. You basically just want armor. You shouldn't need block chance because we have a ton of block chance from the tree and from magma barrier anyway, so you don't really need an insane amount of block chance on this. You don't really need any block chance on this, so we just go all in on armor, physical damage reduction. Armor applies to elemental, max resistances or life, or just any general defensive good stuff on top of your physical Thorns damage. That's the non-negotiable here. That's the thing you have to have, is the flat physical Thorns damage. Crown of the Pale King never stops being our best in slot helmet. You can corrupt it for extra sockets. You can socket the stag idol into it for increased Thorns critical hit chance. So getting a 3 socket crown can just increase your damage a lot by getting you closer to that dreamy 100% crit chance, which is very achievable, by the way. As for our body armor, we're just going to be worrying about having the highest armor quality and socketed white base we can get. This really shouldn't be too expensive. I checked standard trade yesterday, and for a exceptional Warlord's Cuirass, it was 1 divine. That's really not that expensive. It's also not the only good base for us. The Soldier Cuirass is also really good. It sacrifices the armor, also applies to elemental damage to just give you more armor. That's the base that lets you very easily get over 4,000 armor. This armor lets you get 3,779 without an exceptional base. I think this isn't... Oh, this is an exceptional base or a corrupted 3-socket base. It doesn't matter which, but you could even get it up to 4 sockets with corruption. In which case, if we just take a look here at the simulation, boom, 4,200 armor. So white armor is actually just insanely good for us. As for gloves, this is also very simple. You can get increased critical damage bonus here for a little bit more damage, but for the most part, we're just going to care about armor, life, resistances, and armor applies to elemental damage. Now, because of how we are going to path in the very late game, getting the highest armor gloves that you can be worth quite a lot, because we were taking leather-bound gauntlets for 1 evasion rating per 1 armor on equipped gloves, and then also iron reflexes to convert all evasion rating to armor. This gives you 4,244 armor, which in this endgame setup we can have 25,000, so that's going to be about 20% of your armor just from your gloves. Very tasty, very useful. Boots, Briar Patch also never stops being your best in slot boots. You will eventually want a corrupted pair. You can corrupt these to give you up to 30.5% base Thorns critical hit chance, as well as up to 20% movement speed, if I'm remembering my numbers right. So this just makes the build a lot more comfortable, makes it a lot easier to get to that beautiful 100% crit threshold, and makes us a little bit less slow by getting that extra movement speed. Briar Patch is your undisputed best in slot boots. There's never going to be a reason to replace Briar Patch with anything else. Nothing gives you more damage, and you don't really need more defense from your boots. Next up, we have Amulet. This is also very simple. We don't need plus levels from Amulet like most other builds do, so all we're really going to care about from my Amulet is maybe rarity, maybe elemental resistances, some attributes maybe to help us reach thresholds, or just strength to give us some more life. Some life, some armor. there's not really a whole lot of pressure on the amulet slot for us. You can put in a Defiance of Destiny on a higher budget to make yourself even tankier if you want, but that's not necessary. That'll just make you tankier, especially for Simulacrum. You can also just go for a very well-rolled rare amulet, and it's going to give you about the same results. And then for your ring, it's the same. We have very little prefix pressure here. You're going to want to solve your resistances, much like any other build. This can be where you slot in your rarity if you want rarity. This can be where you get some extra life. That's quite valuable. But again, nothing too fancy, nothing too expensive, nothing too complicated. Belt's the same thing. We can actually use more rolls here. What is important is getting that flat Thorns damage on your belt. Again, same as the shield, up to 151 to 220 physical Thorns damage. The more flat damage you have from your belt, the more damage you're gonna do by a wide margin. But you can also get some good defensive modifiers on your belt. You can get resistances, you can get strength, you can get life, and you can get armor, just to again make yourself even tankier. It's all you're really going to care about for your belt. And then jewels is actually where things get very interesting and also very expensive actually. Firstly, your top priority jewel is going to be a Heart of the Well. There are two things you can get on this that are very helpful. Getting both of them at the same time will cost you an arm and a leg, but getting just one of them will still make a massive difference to the build. You can either get +3 to Thorns critical hit chance, which again just makes it much easier to hit that 100% Thorns crit chance, which is very nice. Or you can also gain physical Thorns equal to 4 to 6% of item armor on equipped body armor. This is the same effect as Revenge. It'll just bring that 10% up to 14 to 16%, which is just going to give you even more damage from that 4,000 armor body armor. It's very nice. I've stuck some suffixes into this because I was just theory crafting what the ideal would be, and I think crit chance and crit bonus is as good as it gets. It's gonna scale the price up by a ton. You don't care about your suffixes on your Heart of the Well. You just want at least one of these 2 Thorns nodes. 2 if you can get it, but that's going to be expensive, like I say. Then we want a From Nothing as well. This you're going to want for Resonance. Resonance is nice just because it can give you some more crit chance to help solve some problems, as well as some more crit damage bonus, again, to solve some problems if you have any. This is not super important. This is a way for you to spend some extra points when you're level 90 plus. You can instead just go for a rare jewel with increased Thorns damage. Those are extremely cheap, and maybe you can get some extra modifiers on top of that. There's nothing really that's insanely good for us, but like area of effect isn't bad, armor isn't bad. There's like just a few things here and there that you can get that just aren't bad. No harm in getting them, you know. And then the very, 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 very expensive unique for this build is going to be a Prism of Belief for Scavenge Plating. Last league, I believe, a +2 Scavenge Plating Prism of Belief was like 100 divines a week or two into the league. 3 levels was hitting close to a mirror. These are going to be expensive, but even a +1 level 1 is going to give you an insane amount of damage. So you can just get a +1 level 1 when you can afford it, replace that with a +2 when you get more money, replace that with a +3 when you're absolutely balling. Again, early on, you can just replace this with a rare ruby with increased Thorns damage. What is also an option for a unique jewel in your endgame, although we only have the 3 jewel sockets and they're already taken up, but if you can't afford one of the other jewels, this shouldn't be too expensive. It's an Amanamu Undying Hate. This gives you essentially the effect of Progenesis in Path of Exile 1. Any Path of Exile 1 players know how insanely strong that is. When you take damage from hits, it will prevent 20% of your life loss, and then you'll just lose that life over 4 seconds instead. You'll lose a little bit of extra life, but because you're constantly leeching, you won't notice that at all. This is gonna feel like 20% less life lost. It is very strong. Now, I've given you a few sneak peeks into what the endgame tree is gonna look like as we've gone along. It's not gonna look too far different from your early endgame tree. We're not going to be doing any respecs. The big thing we're after here is just increased block chance, because this is going to make you even tankier, especially with recovering life when you block. Everything in service of just making us less one-shottable and just making us recover better and better and better. In service of the same thing, you can go for tempered defenses for even more armor applies to elemental damage. In service of the same thing, you can go for leather bound for just more armor from your gloves, and iron reflexes and leather bound just go hand in hand. You can go for gem enthusiast for increased maximum life and increased movement speed. I've gotten the skill setup here, just two gems slotted in here that are just there to trigger gem enthusiast for that life and movement speed. And then as for our Ascendancy, obviously in the end game, as you progress further and further on, you're gonna get more Ascendancy points. Now, eventually, once you are res capped, you're going to drop Tantalum Alloy because you can get enough res from gear to not need that, but you can keep this really as long as you want. The other nodes we're going to care about is first off support straps. This gives you 20% increased strength. We're not a strength stacker. We don't desperately need strength, but strength is life. As you can see on this simulation, if I get rid of support straps right now, I'm going to lose 175 life. That's quite a bit, so support straps can just be nice to have. We also have your flowing metal for even more armor applies to elemental damage. This is just going to make your max hit even higher. This is going to make you even less likely to get one shot. This is just going to make the game easier. You can also get Molten Symbol to take 25% of physical damage from hits as fire damage. As you can see, this gives us 1,700 physical max hit because of just how much more we reduce fire damage than we reduce physical damage. So this is again just going to make you even tankier. Internal Layer, also great. In the patch, it's getting buffed to 100% reduced critical damage bonus. At the moment, it's 50% reduced critical damage bonus. I think 100% reduced critical damage bonus just makes you immune to crits, which is nice. I don't see any reason why any of us would complain about that. And then lastly, this is, I think, what you take when you drop Tantalum Alloy is Dedication to Kitava. This gives you 100% of armor, also applies to chaos damage. Now, this can't be simulated in Path of Building, and we already have a chaos max hit in this sim of almost 15,000. So this is really not a high priority node. You're not really going to take that much chaos damage very often. But again, everything in service of just increasing our max hit and making us a little bit tankier. That's all that really matters. We just don't want to get one shot under basically any circumstances. Now, this is, as I said, your high budget Smith setup. So you might be wondering what changes about gems. Well, if you look at your Rapid Assault and your Rake, nothing changes. In fact, they're still level 5 and level 3 just to keep those mana costs low, because leveling these up makes no changes for you. This is mentioned in the notes. Read through the notes. Don't level up your Rapid Assault. Don't level up your Rake. It's just going to be annoying. Keep on with Resonating Shield. Nothing really changes here. You can get Urk Smelting. This is being buffed in the patch. It makes it so that fully breaking enemy armor, it makes them take 5% increased physical damage permanently, up to 20%. On a lot of tankier bosses, you might actually be able to get to that 20%, but either way, you're breaking armor anyway, so that 5%, there's no reason to not get it. So Urk Smelting is going to be really great. Magma Barrier, again, nothing changes. Where things really change in the gem setup as you get higher and higher budget is Scavenge Plating. The higher level your Scavenge Plating, the more flat thorns it's going to give you, up to honestly kind of insane amounts. You can see here at level 24, that would be in the simulation, it's going to give you 560 to 840 flat thorns damage. That's absolutely insane. That's going to be a significant portion of your damage. And the way we achieve those levels is firstly by using Uhtred's Augury for +3 levels, because we only have 2 other supports in here, and then Diala's Desire, which we all know is very fucking expensive. You can just use Physical Mastery until you have a hell of a lot of money, because what we really care about here is the +1 to level of supported skill gems. The plus quality just makes Scavenge Plating have a better duration. We do like duration. I think with Diala's Desire, you can get up to like 16 seconds of duration, which just means you don't have to break armor as often. It just makes the build more comfortable. But you really can just use Physical Mastery here if you can't afford a Diala's Desire. Now, I have been discussing this super expensive Smith setup. It is worth noting that there will probably be a point in your budget, although I can't say for sure precisely where, but at which it just becomes stronger to switch to Titan, because hulking form is just insanely good on a higher level character, especially if you can get to level 100. Hulking form is going to give you so much more than basically every point on Smith of Kitava combined, except that you're going to now not be able to use your normal armor to gain an insane amount of armor. But don't worry, as I mentioned earlier in the video, Brass Dome has been buffed. It can now get up to 5,000 armor, so that'll basically make up for everything you lose by dropping Smith. And then also you can get 15% more maximum life. So when you're on infinite budget and high level 95 plus or whatever, Titan is eventually, like I say, just gonna be stronger than Smith. But Smith is just insanely good on a league start scenario. Titan doesn't really come together until you can truly push hulking form to its limits again on those higher levels. It's not a good leveling Ascendancy. It's not a good level 80 Ascendancy. It's a good level 90 Ascendancy. It's a good level 95 Ascendancy. It's a good level 100 Ascendancy. Titan's not a good league starter. It's great for endgame. Now, just to make sure that I have remembered to cover everything, because my brain capacity is limited today and I've not really put in the time and energy to fully script this video as well as I usually script my videos, I'm just going to run us through the notes to make sure that I haven't missed too much. Now, I've mentioned about all of the requirements of switching to Thorns. This can be off-putting for a lot of players when it comes to playing Thorns, and that's entirely valid. You can play Khan's Shield Wall Guide and then switch to Thorns later. Very valid. As for choice rewards throughout the campaign, these honestly aren't that important to Thorns. It doesn't super matter what you pick. In terms of what I pick for Valley of the Titans, I prefer charm charges gained, because eventually at some point in the game you're going to be gaining 0.25 charm charges per second from your rare charges, so just increasing that by 30% is going to be nice. As for the Venom Vaal, obviously this cannot be changed at any point in the game, so be careful what you pick. We don't really use mana much, so we really don't care about the increased mana here. Stun Threshold can make you a lot faster in mapping, and Ailment Threshold can do the same thing. Eventually, you'll probably charm for freeze immunity anyway, so I would take Stun Threshold, but getting frozen is very annoying, so Ailment Threshold is also very comfortable. As for tattoos, these also can't be changed, but these also don't matter much. We take decent advantage of Dexterity because it allows us to equip our abilities in our spear. We take decent advantage of Strength because that is life. We don't really take much advantage of Int, so I would probably rather take the Resistance than the Int. But in general, I think here you just take the Res because it makes gearing easier, especially in the early end game, whereas the attributes will just maybe make you like maybe 0.1% stronger in the uber end game. So this, again, doesn't matter much. I would just take the triple resistance because it just makes gear that much easier. Then for the abandoned prison, again, we don't really care about mana, so increased mana recovery from flasks doesn't matter. I prefer to take the 30% increased life recovery from flasks instead. And then 7 pillars, like basically every other build in the game, just take the increased movement speed. It's just going to make life easier. You can take the attributes, you can take the resistances, you can take the global defenses, but everyone just wants to be faster in this game. I personally take the increased movement speed. Now, something important to note, I've mentioned crit chance a lot throughout the game. The difference in damage between 99% crit chance and 100% crit chance, in theory, doesn't sound like that much, but you do so little damage when you don't crit. You don't want to basically not do damage 1% of the time, especially if you get an unlucky streak. So getting to 100% crit chance is basically the best thing you can do for your damage. The ways you can get to this 100% crit chance, firstly and easily, you can corrupt your Briar Patch. It's a very cheap, unique, into up to a 30.5% base crit chance as opposed to 25% base crit chance. So going to give you a lot more critical strike chance for very little money. The next probably cheapest option is going to be Stag or Idols in your Crown of Pale King. You can get up to 3 of these if you corrupt an exceptional Crown of the Pale King. That's going to give you 150% increased Thorns damage. It's just general good stuff. There's no reason to not do that. I mentioned this earlier. You can get Thorns crit chance on Heart of the Well. It's 3% base crit chance, so that is going to scale really well. But it's not super necessary. It's optional. I personally prefer the armor as Thorns damage node if you can only pick one. But if you need to get to that 100% crit chance, Heart of the Well will help a lot. And then lastly, a From Nothing from Resonance. Obviously, I put that in the endgame build, but it can also just be a problem solver because you can get 20, 30, 40% increased crit chance here. It's a lot of increased crit chance. It can, again, just help you get to that 100%. Then we've got your Spear Crafting Guide. Go check out that video if you want to watch a video for it. Otherwise, just read here. Again, very little has changed since last league in terms of crafting. The only thing is that we don't really want the increased spirit reservation efficiency anymore. But if anything, that makes our spears easier to craft. So go through it, full send, craft your spear. If you have any questions, please check me out on Twitch. You can ask in my chat. You can ask in the comments down below, or the place where you're probably going to be responded to the fastest, because there is going to be more than just me responding to you, is the Thorn Hub Discord. The link will be in the description down below. I want to leave you with this thought. If you're going to play Thorns, don't level Rapid Assault or Rake. So many people come to me and they're like, how do you manage your attribute requirements? How do you not run out of mana? Because my Rapid Assault is level 5 and my Rake is level 3. If you level them up, all it's going to do is increase your attribute requirements and your mana costs. It's not going to give you any damage. It's not going to give you any quality of life. It's just going to make your life harder. Leave Rapid Assault and Rake at the lowest level you can. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I hope this has been a good guide. I hope I haven't made editing Lily's life too hard, because my brain capacity is so low right now, but we're getting really close to league start, so I just want to get this video out. I promised it to a bunch of you, and I think you deserve this good content. And I also don't think Culturax's planning to put out a build guide this league, because he's not sure yet what he's going to be league starting. So here is your Thorns league start guide. Thank you all for watching. Remember to press the subscribe button so you see more of my content if you want anything to do with Culturax or Thorns or whatever build catches my eye next. That will help you see my content about that sooner. If I make any crafting guides, that's going to be on my YouTube channel. So again, just subscribe. If you like, you're also more likely to see my future videos, and also lets me know that you liked the video. Thank you. And leave a comment with any of your thoughts, any of your questions. Compliments go a long way. This video almost didn't get made, and then someone was like, oh my god, I'm so excited for your Thorns video. I can't wait to see it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna work on it. Yay, thanks. And so many people have been nice to me in the comments, so thank you. Keep up the great work. I appreciate all of you. And I will see you in the next one. If I find the time, I will make a Thorns Ascendancy tier list on a stream, probably a few hours after this video goes up. Depending on when the video goes up. I'm not sure when that's going to be. Thank you all for watching, and goodbye.